So, why are we here today? That is because 12% of the Department of the Air Force has ever been on a shaving waiver. In terms of a joint total force perspective, this means that it is likely that upwards of 168,000 servicemen who are currently serving today have ever held a shaving waiver. Even with this incredible number of shaving waiver holders within our ranks today, there's statistically significant evidence that we have a strong institutional bias against facial hair, which is impacting our competitive strength. Today, we are going to hear directly from our most valuable resource, our people of all ranks, ages, and demographics, who will talk about the impact of policies requiring a clean shave for the majority of situations that just might not be necessary. As you will hear, this is an issue that disproportionately affects Black and African American servicemen, as it is seen that this demographic makes up 63% of all shaving waiver holders. Our team believes that the only way to foster a culture of inclusivity for all servicemen is to allow facial hair for all individuals, eliminating the primary need for a member to hold a shaving waiver.
I've had a shaving waiver for pretty much my entire career. I've been in for 11 years. Um, and in those 11 years, it has been tough. So often I've missed out on certain opportunities like honor guard. I always wanted to do honor guard, especially as an airman, but I was always told no because you have a shaving waiver. And oftentimes it would be like those opportunities would be dangled in front of you in exchange for your shaving waiver. So they'll say, hey, you want to do this DV visit? You want to do this honor guard? Well, we'll let you do it if you get rid of your shaving waiver. I'm a little bit more stubborn, and I've often just said no. But as I've progressed in rank, I do want to continue to progress in rank. As an NCO, I also want to become a recruiter. And during that time, I was going through the process, and then eventually my squadron commander and first sergeant came down and told me, "Hey, we can't press forward with putting you in for a recruiter because you have a shaving waiver." So at one point, I was also the NCOIC of a dermatology clinic. So a few of the dermatologists offered to do laser hair treatment because most of my breakouts are like in my cheek area and under my neck. So I started and I did actually one session, but midway through the session, it just didn't feel like the right thing for me. It almost felt like, I'm all for being a part of the team. I'm all for try not to stick out too much, but it just seemed like a permanent and extreme thing. I don't just like Emmett Tyler. I don't think in most cases people meant any harm, but it just didn't. It just felt like an extreme thing. Um, that's pretty much been my experience. I've had a lot of mentors over my career and a lot of senior enlisted leaders and just senior NCOs and higher ranking people have always like pulled me to the side and said things like, "Hey, I like what you're doing. I think you're a great airman and even NCO." But they've always a lot of them have always said like, "Hey, if um if you got rid of that shaving waiver, like you would go a lot further." And as great as that sounds, and younger me probably would have thought, that was a good idea. It just, the older I get, the more I'm like, that just doesn't feel like the right thing, at least for me. And like I said, I never want to be somebody that's always, sticking out, but some things it just didn't feel like it just seemed like an extreme, at least for myself. So yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell. That's been my experience with having a shaving waiver. And then just one thing, it just seemed to be as an airman, it felt more harassing. As an NCO, people like don't approach you as much, just more of like the conversation. So even as an airman, when I was stationed in Germany, I was approached I was a new airman to the squadron, and there was a individual who would pull me to the side and ask for my shaving waiver. And for my first month there at the squadron, I was literally asked for my shaving waiver from that person almost every day. Until I mentioned like, hey, this seems like, a harassing thing. And then from that point, that person would send NCOs to me. So, like I said, as an NCO, I see it less, but, it's always feel like it's the conversations that you're not a part of that, you get kind of pushed to the side. So that's why now as an NCO, as soon as I get to a new squadron, new area, first thing I do is go to the first sergeant, my supervisor, and show them my shaving waiver. So, at least it's on the table. But sorry to be long-winded, but that's pretty much my experience.
Good evening. First of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to have me here on Crucial Convo. So thank you. So like Aaron Tyler and thank you, Simon Braxton, with the opportunities is pretty much the same. I also wanted to be a recruiter. I also wanted to be a drill sergeant, and I was always told that I would not qualify for those opportunities due to not maintaining a high military standard appearance. I even said, I even was ignorant at one point, and I went to the non-commissioned officer academy and to try to be an instructor for warrior leaders course, which is our first NCO leaders course, and set an appointment with the sergeant major. And from time he saw me, he was like, "You're not qualified due to me having a shaving profile." But in addition to what Aaron Tyler and Sam Braxton spoke about, what affected me the most was that the time of trying to get that shaving waiver, when I was going through the process of going back to the doctors to get that. They gave me creams, they gave me oils, they gave me razors. They told me I'm shaving wrong. It even got to the point where I told the doctor, well, if I'm doing it wrong, shave me so you can see. One doctor took me up on it and actually did it, and I bumped up. I had scars on my face. It was like warps, big white pimples. It hurt. The wind blowing on my face. I was in pain. Being in the Army, having missions, going to the range and having the Kevlar straps rub on my face, caused more irritation. So it was more than just the opportunities. It was for as far as my well-being and health and feeling good too, because I was in pain every day because of that, uncomfortable because of that, and I had to try and ignore the pain, but it's very hard when wind blowing your face hurts. But that's pretty much the same thing I did as far as opportunities. I never got opportunities, but it also just hurted too.
Well, first, I appreciate you guys inviting me. I don't think I'm the face of anything, just a person that had an opportunity to tell a story. And it's obvious people want to listen. To Marvin, Ryan, and Derek, people never know how challenging it is to tell your story, to profess your truth for everyone to hear and judge. And so first off, I want to say thank you three for being who you are and doing what you're doing. So since the AFSOC Unfiltered series, I've received multiple emails of encouragement from airmen that have had similar situations and similar stories. I received texts, DMs. That video has been reran and attributed to multiple articles and referenced many times over. I've received phone calls, emails, and requests for coffee with numerous GOs to talk about different situations and scenarios that they've gone through in their leadership careers. Friends that I've served with that thought maybe the stories that I were telling pertain to situations that we had together, just to say, hey, I'm sorry, or I didn't realize that was me, or hey, can we talk through what I was thinking? The bottom line is, people were listening. People wanted to have that conversation. Folks were thankful for General Slife being out there leading with empathy and allowing me to share his spotlight with the rest of the Air Force. And we just need to have more conversations on this. That's what I've learned. So for those that didn't hear my story, big picture, I've had a shaving waiver since 2004. In 2005, I went to pilot training where, I mean, I was able to keep a seal for every sortie for those years. Since 2008, I've deployed 8 times where my shaving waiver has never been a thing or a question. The reality is my situation was a little bit, it wasn't at the hard end of it. Like I get them under my neck and my cheek area, but I didn't often have to grow my hair out to a 1/4 of an inch. With that said, though, I do remember every day getting my keys, my ID card, and my shaving waiver, just in case anyone ever asked. Those are the 3 things I grabbed when I walked out the door. And I'll tell you, as I was moving on through my career, it became humiliating just to know that was a thing I need to carry in case someone did ask me about it. I can't say many opportunities were closed off to me because I mean, I've had some great leaders and I've had some great opportunities. But in 2011, after talking to my commander, who basically reminded me that I had never had a squadron commander on a shaving waiver, which was a goal of mine, I made the decision to get laser hair removal. And again, for the folks that've never done it, or Derek, for your few minutes underneath the laser, it's painful. It's absolutely painful. And you have to do it over and over and over and over again. It's not something you do one time. And oh, by the way, your hair doesn't disappear, it just gets thinner. And so I went through that. And after I did that, I remember walking by airmen with shaving waivers and starting to judge them. Like, man, y'all ain't trying to put in the work I try to put in. You know, you don't want to be a part of the team as bad as I want to be part of the team. And it wasn't until like legitimately before I went into squadron command that I had an epiphany. And that epiphany was I was part of an organization that made me start looking down on people like me, people that had the same condition that I had. And I even questioned if it made me not like myself. I just be truthful with that. And so in that epiphany, I was enlightened and I was like, I have to be an advocate. I have to do more and I have to lead with empathy. I have to start talking to people and ensuring the story was told. And I'm glad that Journal's Life allowed me to share it. But God willing, the irony in all this is in 3 or 4 years, I'll have an opportunity to command a wing. And in my organization, every wing has the same rules, which is if you have a shaving waiver, if you're pregnant, you can't stand in line and do honor guard. And so you have a commander on a shaving waiver telling people like Ryan and Derek that are obviously great airmen, they can't serve in a formation to represent the organization that I will be representing. And that's challenging, it's hard, and I just don't know if that's going to work well. But overall, again, thanks to 3 of you guys for standing up and doing this. I'm going to tell you from experience, there's folks that are going to have your back 100%, and there's others that are going to want to question your reasoning and purpose behind this. Be strong. If you need a shoulder or someone to talk to, hit me up on Gal.
Willingness to discuss very personal experiences. And it's these stories and the many more that I've heard that have helped fuel this initiative and the need for change. And as a young officer, I was a flight surgeon and profile officer at a high ops tempo base that was deploying enablers weekly at times. And the medical profiles are important and necessary. And I saw a lot of shaving waivers. Later, when I went into dermatology, I started to notice recurring themes. Servicemen coming in requesting laser hair removal, but saying they really didn't want it. When I asked why, it was because they wanted to do a special duty or they were getting negative comments and they felt pressured to look clean shaven. There were men who needed shaving waivers but refused to get one and wanted to shave through the pain. And they were concerned about the impact it would have on their careers. Others just told of the negative comments they repeatedly received simply for having an approved medical waiver and facial hair. And at first I thought maybe there was something wrong with the airmen, right? Maybe there was some truth to it. people wouldn't just say negative things or deny opportunities without a reason, right? Well, over time, I learned there are a lot of misconceptions about shaving waivers. The reason most men are on shaving waivers is because of pseudofolliculitis barbae, or PFB, and it is often misunderstood in the military. PFB occurs from the way hair naturally grows. And when a naturally curly hair is shaved close to the skin, it curls back into the skin and causes a painful inflammatory response, resulting in bumps or pustules or open sores. And it can lead to discoloration and scarring, both of which can be permanent. PFB is distinct from shaving irritation, which doesn't involve the hair curling back into the skin. And the majority of men affected by PFB are Black and African American, but it can occur in any race. And here are several pervasive misconceptions regarding PFB in the military that I've learned over the years. The first two misconceptions are that members would not have PFB if they just learned to shave correctly or just use the right razors, creams, or oils. And it's important to understand there's a spectrum of disease. So for shaving irritation or mild PFB, improved shaving techniques and products may control symptoms. However, for moderate to severe PFB, there is no amount of shaving correctly or with the right products that will prevent these painful symptoms. They simply must stop shaving. The next misperceptions are related to treatment. Prescription medications and laser hair removal are not the cure-all that they may seem to be. Medications are simply not that effective, and laser hair removal, as you've heard, is painful, and it does require about 6 months of monthly treatment. It's expensive and it's not widely available, and it does prevent that member from growing a natural appearing beard in the future after their military service. And finally, the most damaging misconception is surely that members with shaving waivers are lazy, or they want to be different, or that they even don't want to get promoted, and a host of other negative assumptions that we've heard about tonight. And I do want to talk a little bit about Lieutenant Colonel Simon Ritchie, who couldn't be here tonight. He's a flight surgeon dermatologist stationed in Germany, but he really was the lead researcher for this project that started 3 years ago, after he decided to gather data about PFB, since he was dealing with it on a near daily basis in his dermatology clinic. He surveyed over 10,000 active duty Air Force men, and we did find that members on shaving waivers are promoting slower than those that are not. And while shaving waivers affect everyone negatively, it was the Black and African American members that were disproportionately negatively affected because they need the shaving waivers far more than other ethnicities because of the PFB. And so the conclusion of that study was indeed that the Air Force's male grooming standards are associated with a racially discriminatory effect against our Black and African American members. And after years of educating patients and leaders about PFB and shaving waivers and gathering the data presented tonight, it became evident that the way forward for truly inclusive male grooming standards would be to normalize facial hair and allow the option for all men to wear facial hair, which can be done in a neat and professional manner, shown by so many already in the military and in our communities. So I urge you to talk to those with PFB or on shaving waivers and listen to their experiences with an open mind. And I know you too will see the negative impact experienced by many on shaving waivers. And we will continue to educate and also advocate for policy change to ensure inclusive male grooming standards across the DoD. And I thank you so much for your time tonight.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the airmen who shared their stories, and to Emily Long. Such compelling feedback from them is important, and I think this video hopefully will become mandatory viewing for every senior enlisted and officer leader as they head into command and other leadership positions. So the Navy has a long history with beards. You can see mine here that I grew the day I retired. If you walk around, the War College or headquarters of Surface Forces, there's a picture of the monitor with beards, everybody from the captain on down. So there's a history there. In 1984, we all shaved our beards out of really, I think, two reasons. to sort of conform with the other services who had gone beardless earlier, and concern for safety aboard ships with firefighting equipment and gas masks. So I'll get to that in a minute, but that's kind of the Navy history. So we've been 1984 on some relaxation of PFB standards, just as there was with women's hairstyles as part of the inclusion that came out of Task Force 1 Navy, led by Dr. Barber and Admiral Halsey last year. So long history there, but a frequent discussion on it. But a couple things that, so I approach this conversation with a mix of three things. Shame and embarrassment, that as a commanding officer twice, I didn't get beyond the presence or absence of a chip to find out the stories that I just heard these folks tell today that I know our sailors are telling. I had a naval person ask me the other day, well, wait a minute, John, this is an Air Force issue, right? They did the study. And so what makes you think it applies to the Navy? Well, what makes me think it applies to the Navy is talking to sailors. And it absolutely applies to all services. It's a human issue. But something Emily didn't mention was the monetary cost. So here we are in an era where we're trying to save dollars and time, man hours, and the Air Force spent $10 million over 2 years in medical costs, 18,000 doctor visits, multiply that by the services. That's all time that could be spent and money that could be spent on something else if we just normalize facial hair. The career impacts. I saw in the chat, do you think that fit reps and evals are impacted? Well, the study that the Air Force did showed people leaving the military at greater numbers if they have beards, people getting promoted behind their peers. But why is that? It's because their fit reps and their evaluations and their opportunities are limited. And you also showed that statistically, it affects a demographic that we're bending over backwards to retain and recruit as Black and African-American males. But it also affects others. I have a white friend with a beard who is often was turned down for a chit at one command because they said that's a Black thing, and was ridiculed for his condition. So it goes beyond just race, but it does affect one demographic. But for me, the most compelling argument is the human impact. Let's be clear. This is not a passive situation. This is a policy that is actively affecting our sailors in a negative way. I'm a human factors engineer. I worry about barriers to team performance. And this is one. And so that's why I joined this group. And that's why I'm sharing your work as much as I can. And I really, really appreciate those who spoke tonight. And Emily Wong and Dr. Ritchie, make no mistake, this was a passion project for them. Nobody told them to do this. Nobody asked them to do this. They did this against the wind of their own accord, and that should be noted. Thanks.
So like she mentioned, I've done really a complete 180 on this issue. I spent almost 32 years in the Air Force. And to be honest, for about 29 of those years, I'm gonna readily admit that I was very ignorant on this topic. So some of the misconceptions that Dr. Wong talked about, that was me. I was the typical senior leader chief that didn't think airmen with a shaving waiver belonged in the front office. I was a command chief at every level. I had opportunities to hire all kinds of folks, and I was adamant about not hiring somebody with a shaving waiver, just because I fell into that category of this is Air Force policy, it's not professional, even though I had my own issues with shaving. I don't believe that I ever had PFB. I do have shaving irritation. And so I fell in that category of believing that if you just learn how to shave, and believe it or not, it was a white guy who taught me how to use a straight razor and the right shaving creams and brushes and whatever. And, I got a better result. So therefore, in my mind, okay, all you got to do is use the right tools and equipment and creams and you'll be fine. And so not only was I ignorant about just the issue in general of PFB and the conditions, I would say I was willfully ignorant about the impact that it was having on young Black men. Some of it was because I just ignored it. Some of it was because I just wanted these young men to do what I did, right? Just suck it up and figure it out and you'll be fine. in my last couple of years, when I was the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, I did transition to a different stance after, working at the highest levels of the United States Air Force. And after spending lots and lots of time with commanders and really kind of surveying the lay of the land and realizing that, the Air Force is run by old white men. Most of the commanders in the Air Force are white males. And even if we change the policy, because I started softening up to, okay, I can see how it makes sense, but I still stayed away from it. One of the primary reasons is, I started thinking like I have to be the protector of these young Black men, because in my mind, and I still have, believe this to a certain extent. In my mind, I felt like, okay, if we change the policy, even if we normalize and allow beards, it's going to be mostly Black men that wear beards. And even if it's within the policy, commanders will still find a reason to not hire them, to not select them for opportunities, to not select them for promotion. And it's hard enough, as we know from some of the other studies and data that's come out. In my mind, I felt like, okay, it's hard enough for young Black men to excel in the Air Force at times. Why make it even harder? But again, when this issue would come to me, it would be in the form of, and some of my friends are in here, and some of you may have been in audiences when I used to do all calls. It would be somebody would say, "Hey, Chief, when are we going to get beards?" I'd make a joke about it. We'd move on. There was no data. There was no the detailed work and research and data that this team has presented. None of that came to me. And I never asked for it, which I would say is bad on me. But after seeing what the team has presented, after sitting down and spending some time with DB and really gaining a better understanding of what the team is doing and how this is impacting the folks, hearing the stories of Ryan and Derek and Marvin, and the research that Dr. Wong and Dr. Cordle has done. I've done a complete 180. I think this is the right thing to do. I hate that, I didn't take the necessary steps to get this data, to, educate myself about this issue, to get out of my own way, to control my own ego about this issue, to not be so judgmental about people who had shaving waivers. I really feel like, I let a part of our Air Force down when I was in a position to really have an impact on such a huge issue like this. But, like I always say, in life, you don't get any do-overs, right? And had the information been presented to me in the way that it is now, maybe I would have did something different. Had I asked for it to be presented, had I asked for a team to be pulled together to do the research, maybe I would have done something different. But all I know right now is I'm in full support of this initiative. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do for all of our services. Not just because of the medical condition and the mental health issues and all the things that the people talked about on this thing, but because I think it's been proven that this is an issue of race. This, negatively impacts, men of color. And, now is the time I would say that we really need to take a stand and do something about it. Again, I'm just a guy now, right? I'm not quite sure where the current Air Force leadership stands on it, but I don't see how anyone could ignore the data. That's not only the data and the research, but the anecdotal evidence as well, that this is the right thing to do. And again, I just wish that I had taken a different stance, especially for the greater part of my career. And again, I just want to thank the team for allowing me to be a part of this and allowing me to add my support.
And I think this is one of the areas that we need a green check mark. We need to get better at. Big eye opener for me. I just learned something new every day. And back to George Floyd, right after the, one of the memorial services, one of the ministers stood up and said, we're better than we were, and we're not as good as we could be, and that's not good enough. And I thought, that really fits for our Air Force too, right? Because every day we're getting better, and every day we're getting better educated and learning. So I'm that commander. Chief Day Wright referred to the old white guys. I was like, hey now, I'm the old white guy, I guess now. And I was that wing commander 10 years ago at Mildenhall that said, hey, and I didn't realize the bias I had. I said, hey, I don't have a problem with a shaving waiver, but if you're on a shaving waiver, you're not going to be at the gate. You're not going to represent my wing. If you're on a shaving waiver, then you can do your job, but I don't want you on my honor guard representing my wing, right? And man, that hurts now when I think about the words that I said and the guidance that I gave, and I see the airmen that were hurt by that or could have been hurt by that, and so we got to do better. To me, this is all about readiness. So 18th Air Force, we've got 36,000 airmen, and this is all about getting ready for the high-end fight. And to me, this is something that we need to put beside us, put behind us, and move on. I mean, to allow every airman to have a beard. I realize the old heads will be rolling over in their grave. I was at the Army Air Force game, and I had friends both that had served in the Army and had served in the Air Force, and they're like, Bibb, what the hell are you doing with our military to allow these ponytails out there in the formation as they did the march on, right? And I was like, how's it hurting you, right? I mean, do you understand how, the impact we're making to allow everybody to serve? So we need every airman for the fight, and to me, this is about getting after high-end readiness and making sure every airman feels welcome and feels like they're a part of our team, because guess what? That airman that's on a shave waiver right now is out there working an 18-hour shift with monster drinks lined up across across their vehicle. I just got back from Charleston today and met some of those airmen. So anyway, it's we got to get after it. So this big eye opener for me. Since the team briefed me 2 weeks ago, I've started asking my wing commanders. I've been asking airmen that are on shave waivers what their story is. I really appreciate the bravery of the airmen tonight that are sharing their story with us. That takes a lot of guts. But it's a big eye opener for me, and I just didn't realize the pain and the anguish that that we were having. One of the airmen or one of the members on the team here put in the chat, has anybody asked you for a shoe waiver ever? But how many times have we asked for a shave waiver, right? For an airman that's in tennis shoes because they sprained their ankle or whatever, right? I think it's unforgivable. We got to learn from this and move on. I was at Little Rock last week, and I met an airman that was on a shave waiver, and I said, hey, tell me your story. And I said, I'm just really interested to hear it. And he said, sir, I really tried to be a sharp airman. I really tried. And this guy was a tech sergeant, right? And he said, my whole career, I thought I needed to shave. And so I really tried hard, and it was so painful, and I hurt so bad. And finally, I had damaged my face so bad, I had to have surgery to repair the damage I'd done by trying to shave and trying to conform and trying to be, a sharp airman, whatever that means. And so facial hair has no bearing on our job performance. What's important to us: character, leadership, job performance, and folks that stand up and do the right thing. And facial hair is not part of that. One of our wing commanders shared with me, he had an officer that came to him and said, you know what? A black officer that arrived on the base, and it wasn't the base he's at now, it was a different base. But anyway, when he was a new lieutenant and arrived on base, and the senior black officer in the wing called the black officers in together and said, guys, who is on a shave waiver here? If anybody's on a shave waiver, you need to get rid of it. It's not acceptable for officers, and it will slow you down. We need you to get to the next level. And if you're on a shave waiver, you absolutely need to come off. That was the mentoring that we were giving each other as folks, were arriving to our bases. Unacceptable. I talked to, Brooke is on the panel tonight and mentioned that, when she was a squadron commander, one of her officers shared with her the agony he was just by opening his wallet every morning as he pulled out his ID, and right next to it was a shave waiver, and to have to carry a piece of paper that he had to carry that nobody else did to say that he was a member of the team, right? And I hadn't really thought that through, what that means for an airman on a shave waiver. So I don't want to talk too long. You guys have some great stories. I told the team last week when they briefed me, I'll be the first. I'll be the first airman to grow a beard as soon as if this gets approved to the next level. And because I think we have to take away the stigmatism that goes with this. Even if you change the rules, if people don't have beards, then if we don't see leaders with beards, then I think it'll still be a thing. So I think we're gonna have to lead by example. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep a beard, Shannon. My wife may not let me keep it past a month or two, but we'll wear it as long as we can. And anyway, I'm happy to do that. So I don't know if we'll get there, on the joint front quickly. I think this is the first steps. I think we got to have these conversations. But until then, as leaders, there's a lot of behaviors we need to stop immediately, ASAP, that we have control over. And that's not harass an airman over shave waivers. That's taken out guidance. We have written guidance in some of our wings that says you can't be at the gate or you can't be on the honor guard, right? We can fix that stuff today. So that stuff we got to move out on. I think this is the beginning of a longer conversation, probably to allow beards in service. And you go through old military museums, and they are lined with sailors and Army generals, right, that have beards. So they were great leaders, right? We could name them off, right? So obviously that's part of our history. It's part of our heritage. It's part of who we are as the American military culture. And I think we have to kind of open our eyes and be willing to change. So, all right, sorry I talked so long, but I'm pretty fired up about this. And I'm just very excited that we have airmen like this to get together that help institute this change and can back it up with the data. I think bringing the data forward over the last few weeks up to the 4-star level is powerful. And so I have high hopes. So thanks very much for the opportunity. I'm just honored to be here tonight. Thanks.